Hey, Robert, how are you?
Good. So I just want to tell you that last week one of my longtime clients called me up and said that they wanted to move back to Mountain Lakes for in a rental property, and they were willing to pay up to $10,000 a month for a house. And so I said, "Great, let me see what I can find for you," knowing full well that there was only one house for rent in Mountain Lakes, and it wouldn't be right for them. So, like we've talked about before, I called an agent that I'm very friendly with in Mountain Lakes, who is the head of a very strong team, and asked if they had any rental properties coming on. And she said, as a matter of fact, I just signed one, and I'm not putting it on the internet yet because I have to take pictures. And but as soon as I get the pictures, I'll send them to you right away. And then she called me back a couple of days later and said, can't do the pictures because the landlord decided he wanted to paint the whole inside of the house. She said, but I've arranged for a one-time showing for you and your client. And so we went yesterday. My client loved the house, and it's her house now. She'll be moving in July, which is when the owners are moving out. But she was like, I don't know how you made it happen, but it's really wonderful.
Because they picked Robert Garber. That's how they made it happen.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. It's 1 minute, 1 minute up. We'll get started in one moment here. Hold on a second. Oh. Wilson, it's early there, huh?
Just a little, but we're good.
All righty. Good morning. Good morning, Tucson.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good morning, Florida. So I don't know, Tiffany, I don't know if you're ready to give us an update. I don't think I've coordinated with anybody for today, but yeah, you, Tiffany. Let me see.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
I never want to be one of those people that are like chattering in the background when everyone's talking, so I try to keep everything on mute. Anyway, happy Friday, everyone. Hope all the moms had a great Mother's Day last week. And this was a really crazy, bonkers week in our business, with all of the stuff happening with the tariffs and the trade deals. And, the stock market actually did really well. And when the stock market does well, the bond market doesn't do so well, and then the rates go up. So, my strategy in an environment like this is really just to try to lock short term the best possible rate I can give the client and float long term. They're talking about maybe a rate reduction in July if all of this stuff starts settling. But, a couple days ago, we were just over 7 again. So this is it's a hard time when you have people that are on the cusp of qualifying, or you have them in purchase brackets that they're just making it and they can't find anything in a lower bracket. So it's a challenging time, but I'm hoping that the volatility of what's going on with trade and everything else will settle. We'll have a nice little rate reduction in July, and then hopefully going into the holidays, we'll have another rate reduction and settle into something more normal. So where are we today? If I had to say, probably a little over 7, maybe 7 and an eighth, something like that. Obviously, jumbo loans and government loans are different. We're probably around 6.625 for FHA. But again, this is changing rapidly and a few times a day over the last couple of days. So if you have anybody that you need to discuss with me, or you have a pre-approval that seems to be not working out for your client, let me know and I'll jump in.
And the good news always is if you buy now and rates go down, you're beating the competition to making those offers.
Right. So it's dating the rate, right? Dating the rate and marrying the property. Find a property that you love, but know that the rate's going to be temporary.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I think that the forewarning about people who are on the bubble, if they were pre-qualified a month, 6 weeks ago when rates were a half or 3/4 lower, which they probably were, right? As much as 3/4 less.
100%,
That
yes.
that there might be some not only difficulty in the payments, but there might be qualification issues.
Definitely.
So I appreciate that update, and I thank you for sharing that and being an excellent business partner of ours as is motto. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So good morning. Today we're going to talk about this fun topic of goal setting. Okay. And I would suspect that our attendance is not going to be the highest because everybody's like, oh, goal setting could be painful, right? You actually have to write stuff down. You have to think about it, and then you actually have to come up with a strategy to execute. And I think it's Tony Robbins said like a goal without a deadline is just a dream or a half-hearted dream. If you don't have a deadline for executing it, then it really means less than zero. All right, can everybody see me all right? You good? Okay. So a goal is, a goal requires you to decide both personally and professionally what you want to do. Okay, and I think we should probably have professional goals and our personal goals that we need to go after. Goals. The key components to goals are to have specificity. Okay. If you just say, hey, I want to grow my business without any specificity, I think, if you made 100,000 and then you made $101,000, you've achieved your goal, but that's probably not what you were looking to do. And it needs to be, with deadlines. Okay. So it might be, I want to increase my engagement on my real estate listings through targeted social media campaigns in the next quarter. And as a result of that, I want to get, 50% more leads and 2 more transactions. That would be like a very specific goal. Goals to be effective also have to have measurability to them. Okay. If you don't have any measurability, you don't know how you're doing. The perfect example is my business coach Wayne will always say, if you want to lose weight, your your measurability is to step on the scale, and that tells you how you're doing. And we just need to have metrics that show us, how we're tracking towards achieving our goal. In real estate, it might be, conversations, meetings, appointments. I think, measuring the number of meetings and appointments is grossly underrated. Buying leads or talking to people, those are all leading measures to getting appointments. Number 3, and as a key component, is the achievability of it. Who wants to be a diamond agent here? Anybody want to be a diamond? $1 million gross next year or this year? Anybody? If you do, unmute yourself. Is that Brian? Did you want to be a diamond, or were you just doing something else?
Boom. I would love to be a diamond. I'm
Okay.
a diamond in the rough.
Huh? You're a diamond in the rough?
I'm a diamond in the rough.
Okay. And do you have a specific plan for that yet, Brian? Or
General. Yeah, not specific, very general.
right?
Being a Brian Buffini guy for 20 years, it's I've got a lot of stuff in place. And having stuff in place and executing is kind of 2 different things sometimes.
And where were you relative to hitting the $1 million last year? Did you make close to half, more than half?
Last year was a bad year for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Had a lot of life stuff going on.
gotcha. Some of those things kind of hit you from left field. In terms of the achievability, Brian, what we need to do is we need to see, is it possible? And then we need to have a plan that gives us the steps to getting there. And it requires, pain. I don't know if anybody's ever been on a diet or tried to lose weight. I'm in that case, get my blood work done, and the doctor's always like, hey, it would be so much better for you if you dropped a few pounds. And the scale tells the story, and I can almost predict what the blood work's going to look like based upon my behavior. And the same is true in real estate. Okay. achievability depends upon, history and practices that are going to get you the result that you want.
If you don't mind, I would love to comment on that really quick.
Sure.
So someone once told me a long time back, and this stuck with me the whole time. I mean, this has stuck with me for years. And the comment was, how you are in one way is how you are in every way. And if you really think about that, you can really go deep and dive deep and think to yourself, just like the example you're using about weight loss. If you're one of those people that starts at the gym, it's your New Year's resolution, and you're going to the gym, you go 3 times, a week starting in January, and you're upholding that, and then life starts getting in the way, you start slowing down, and by the time you're in April, you're rarely going, right? So if you think about how you are in one way is how you are in every way, it helps you realize where some of your downfalls are and where you can really improve to help hold yourself accountable.
Fantastic. And one thing I want to do is, first we had Brian from Scottsdale, and if you can announce yourself when you're talking, so everybody also gets the added benefit of knowing, who's sharing these nuggets. There's your pitch. Go ahead.
Were you talking to me, Rob?
Well, Brian, you could just announce yourself so that everybody knows. And I don't even know, was that Sierra talking a second ago?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, that was me, Ciara, in St. Augustine.
Okay. And Brian, so thanks for sharing. I think, Sierra, one of the things that I took away from that is, sometimes it's hard to separate, especially in our business, our personal and our business goals, because a lot of times, those behaviors are tied together. Brian, why don't you just introduce yourself so people know you, and whenever you comment, if you could do that, so that everybody gets to know who you are, and maybe you'll get some referral business coming in. Step 1 to growing your goals.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I am Brian Neugebauer in the Scottsdale, Arizona office.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. The fourth key component is relevance. It's aligning your goal with your business objectives, right? So they have to be achievable. They have to be relevant. Number 3 is time bound. Number 5 is time bound. So assign a deadline, like I will achieve this by the end of the second quarter, end of the fourth quarter. They must be actionable. They define the steps that you need to reach, such as A/B testing, refining, measuring, adjusting. Measuring the performance doesn't have the impact unless you're willing to make adjustments, right? Measuring will, if you're deploying the wrong strategy, you're measuring it, it's just going to depress you instead of motivate you to change the process that you're engaging. And then adaptability is allow for adjustments based upon insights, shifts, and changes that are occurring. Setting a deadline helps create urgency, and structure will keep you accountable. Okay. Who has written goals and is willing to share them? That's kind of step 1. Who has them written out and wants to share them?
We have it on our board every day. We look at it every day.
Okay, that's Ron Piccolo. Just announce yourself. I know you're a regular.
Yeah. We have, our goal is 3 listings per month, 3 closings per month. That's our goal for 2025.
So it's on the board, and you're an office guy, right? You come in every day
Every day.
and you see that on your board.
Yep.
My
I'm looking
guess,
right now.
my guess is that 80% of us probably don't have the goal written somewhere where you see it daily, and probably 60 or 70% of us don't even review it weekly. Those are the statistics.
Rob, it's when we're talking about goals and you try to stick with your goal. I mean, there's so many distractions, and this was things we talked about in my classes, is there's so many distractions that happen to take you away from what you're supposed to be doing each day. It's like Tony Verl, like he's on the phones from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, cold calling, nobody bothers him. Now, if you can structure that where there's no distractions, then you'll be more successful. But we find it in our everyday life, there's always something that pops up, you know, closing or putting out a fire, or there's an inspection issue or an appraisal issue or whatever. It takes you away from what you're doing. So unless you're really um, unless you're really programmed to do what like Tony does, stay focused on your time, on your schedule, on your time slots, and then you'll be okay. And then you'll be able to get the listings that you need to get and the buyers that you need to get. But you got to stay focused.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody ever heard of Jim Rohn? Anybody who know who that is? See some people shaking their head. So, you know, a quote that Jim Rohn had, which was one of Tony's mentors, was if you don't have a list of written out goals, he goes, I can guess your bank account balance. And he was from a long time ago within $100. And, you know, probably now you'd have to stay within 5,000 bucks, but you understand what he meant is I've also heard it said, show me your schedule, I can predict your bank account. So show me what discipline you have and I can predict the result.
My favorite quote of his, Rob, would be you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And
Yeah.
most people know that, but they don't know that it's from him. And I can't harp on that enough to the agents and to clients and to friends. I always think about that. You know, you look at your choices and, you know, it'll say a lot about your life.
All right. So that's David Haller from
Sarasota,
Western Florida,
Southwest Florida.
Sarasota coast, the Gulf of America. So who would like to have a way to increase the chance of achieving your goals by 42% just by attending today's event? Anybody, just raise your hand.
Me.
Okay. Here is a Harvard study which says if you write your goals down, you're 42% more likely to achieve them as opposed to just knowing what they are. Okay, and then there's metrics which show if you write them down and you review them periodically or daily, that those numbers go up. Not linearly, okay, they go up in a compound manner. Okay, so you can be 300 times more effective if you write your goals down and you review them daily. And I know it sounds crazy, but if you go through reading it and reviewing it, it's going to have an impact. Another a little hack for goals are to set separate goals. Okay, you might want to look at your goals and have a quarterly goal, a quarterly goal, an annual goal, a 5-year goal, and maybe even a lifetime goal. Okay, because you know, do you think we tend to have more short-term goals or more lifetime goals? What do you think?
I think as people, we tend to do lifelong goals versus smaller step goals.
Okay, appreciate sharing that. And I think our industry kind of teaches us around November to do your business plan, which is like a 1-year goal, right? And sometimes we overestimate what we can maybe accomplish in a year and underestimate what we can do in 3 years with consistency. Okay. And you know, looking at goals and recognizing when you're falling short, it's painful, but that's part of the process, right? That pain needs to motivate you and get you back on track.
If I can comment on that for a second as well, I like to set reasonable goals that you can actually accomplish or that you know you are capable of by picking the top 3 sources of where you generate the most business, and have 5 sources total. So being able to focus on the sources that are actually going to help you achieve your goals and spending your time on those, rather than trying to hit everything all at once and be scatterbrained. And then I go by, how much do you want to make this year? How much do you want to make this year? and then you average that out with the commission, depending on your average home price. You knock it down a little bit just to be on the conservative side, and then you increment that out in between 4 quarterly goals. Rather than always trying to hit that big number, if you break it down per quarter, then it's a little easier to achieve, and you know where you're going to be falling behind. And don't ever cut yourself short on time. Make sure that you're putting in enough time where you give yourself some time, some family time, things that come up, distractions, different things like that. So just making sure that they're realistic.
Thank you for sharing. Another, I don't know if Angie Verstock is on with us now, but I want to share that I've been doing this business for a long time, and Angie had a really profound way of working with clients, and it's all about goal setting. But typically, our industry is accustomed to talking to clients and saying, hey, what are you looking to buy, in terms of, town, bedrooms, bathrooms, price, things of that nature. And if you've been on these masterminds, you probably saw one of her masterminds that she contributed to. She talks about going 7 levels deep to try to, help the client. And what she meant with that was, if you were talking to, who wants to just role play talking to like a buyer, for example, like what does that conversation look like? Anybody?
If you were talking to a buyer,
Yeah.
so I'm a realtor and I'm talking to a buyer. You're the buyer?
Yep.
Okay. Well, there's a process you got to go through, which is, introduce each other and say, what exactly are you looking for? If they say we're looking for a 3-bedroom, what I try to do is figure out where the location is, price range. Have they spoken with a mortgage broker? I mean, there's a whole list of things, I try not to get too technical on the phone, because sometimes you scare a buyer away when you start getting very technical about everything. But I just try to find out what they're looking for, if they've been pre-approved, and then try to meet with them. When I do meet with them at the property, of course, take your buyer's broker agreement or touring agreement, showing agreement with you, and just kind of meet with them and talk with them before you even enter the property. So you kind of get a bond with them. So that's the process that, we go through. We try not to
Right.
be too technical on the phone.
So Ron, if Angie were here talking to you as a buyer, Angie would say, can you tell me a little bit about what you're looking for? And you might say, just give me what you'd expect a client to say.
Okay, you're the buyer. So
No,
so,
I'm the agent asking the question. I'm asking you as a client.
oh,
Ron, what are you looking to buy? Tell me what your criteria is.
well, we're looking to buy a 3 or 4 bedroom house. We want to stay under 700, and we're looking for something with a pool. It could
Okay.
be 3, it could be 4. 2-car garage, that we definitely need a 2-car garage, and we like to stay in the Coral Springs area because the
Okay.
schools are good there.
And what's important about, finding that property to you?
Well, of course, we need to have the space, we need to have the square footage, and the schools are very important to us because we have 2 kids.
So you want to have more space for living comfortably, and having a school is important. What's important to you about, having a good school?
Well, what's important? It has to be a good elementary school and a good middle school. It has to be A rated.
And why are you looking? I'm not trying to be difficult. Why are you looking for a top-notch school?
So that our kids get a good education. We don't want to put them in a school where, it's C or D rated. We want to put them in a top school. That's why we want Coral Springs. See, I
And,
don't, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and just, but, and what's important to you about your kids, you know, finishing their primary education, favorably with good grades and doing well?
Well, we just want to make sure that they're, you know, that's our priority. We want to make sure that they're in good schools.
So,
I know.
hopefully they'll be able to get a good job or go to a good university. Is that right?
Well, eventually, yeah, if we stay there that long, but you know, they're young kids, so they have to go through the elementary stage and then middle school.
And you know, if you know, and I'm not as laser focused as Angie, but Angie would then go a level deeper and a level deeper, and it would be, hey, you know, I want my kids to be able to go to a good school. Why that? Because they'll be able to, you know, get a good job and live a good life. And why that? Because that would mean that we did a good job as parents. And it's absolutely amazing how she takes a client that's looking for, you know, a 3 or 4 bedroom with 2 baths in Coral Springs and takes that into, you know, this defines that I was a good parent, right? But in reality, that's truly what people are looking for. That's the difference between, you know, a house and a home, right? You know, people want to buy homes, not really houses. That's an emotional
Right,
connection.
right.
And there's often other reasons, and a lot of times we don't, you know, we don't ask second, third, fourth level questions. And the first time I heard this, and it wasn't from Angie, I thought it was kind of, you know, a little bit corny or a little bit inappropriate to ask questions like that. But I really think if somebody's looking to buy, you know, a property that they're going to be in for 7 to 15 years, you know, asking some deeper questions and having the skills that we have might help us identify, you know, better alternatives than what they're looking for. And if all we're doing is saying, hey, I want a 3 or 4 bedroom in Coral Springs for under 700,000, you know, we're shortchanging, you know, our value proposition to the community, right? Um, and even things like, you know, do they want to buy a home or do they want to become a homeowner? Right. And I think those, you might say, Rob, that doesn't have a distinction. But when you say that somebody becomes a homeowner, that's part of their identity. Buying a home is an action, right? I completed a transaction, I bought a home, but now I view myself differently as a homeowner. And people who own homes, you know, have significantly different financial paths um, from that decision beyond just, you know, 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, what school district you're in. I think we've talked about this several times.
See, a lot of buyers, you know, are pretty much educated on where they want to go because they do the study. They know that the schools are good in certain areas and where the schools are not that good. Because there's certain places in Sunrise where the schools are horrible. The middle school and the high schools are really not that good. So that's why, you know, when they call you and they say, we want Coral Springs, then I would say to them, well, how about Parkland or how about Del Rey or Boca? I might be able to find you something there with good schools. Would you be open to that?
And you know, Ron, there's definitely full merit to that, but I also think, you know, asking them why that's important, you know, helps anchor them to the motivation and takes them out of it being purely a financial transaction. Like buying a home is a financial transaction, becoming a homeowner changes your identity, right? So Angie can eloquently take you from um, the buying process to changing your entire identity to, you know, hey, because I bought this home, I gave my children the best opportunity they can get into a better education, get into a good university, be financially sufficient and live a good life, which means that I was a good parent. I mean, literally, you know, she's the master at taking it 5 to 7 levels deep, as opposed to, yes, you just want a good school system. You know, everybody says they want it. Most people say they want a good school system. But if you ask the deeper questions, you get a better connection to that, Ron. I know it's for people like you and I have been in the business a long time, you know, habits, you know, those type of habits die hard. but I would encourage you to just, ask some deeper questions that will build a better relationship and tie people to what they're looking to do. Is there been anybody here that recently has had a buyer, for example, um, lose a good house because they had an arbitrary stop point? That wasn't what they qualified for, but they said, "Hey, Ron, that house isn't worth more than 725. I'm not going to bid anymore." And they lost their perfect house, and it might have been a year or two ago, and that house is now worth 900. Has anybody ever had a client like that?
I just did in
Be
celebration.
lovely.
And Beth, just give me like a high level of how that worked out. Like, so you showed them a property, checked most of the boxes.
Yep. The agent said, here's, now I forget all the numbers, but let's say it was listed for 900. The agent said, if you offer 850, I think they'll accept it. And I said, okay. And I told him, and he wanted to go 820. Then he went to 830. Meanwhile, another buyer came in. Then I think he went to 840. I mean, it would, and then this other buyer came in and went to 850 and it was done. And he lost it. The agent told us, he thought, and it's an agent I trusted. And I said, I think this agent is being honest about what the price is. So anyway,
Right.
so they're still, we're still looking now. But it's hard to find a house like what they wanted at the price they want.
Why couldn't you encourage that offer to go in at 850? Why was he so like, what was that $30,000 just lost you out? You'd be pending now, everything would be done. What happened in that conversation where you couldn't push him to get that 850 out from the start?
He seemed to think, there was some karma involved, that he felt like, I forget how, he eventually went to 850, but it was too late. They already had gotten the deal done with the other buyer. Oh, also the other buyer, this is their third, maybe their fourth house. But he had to get a mortgage for it. So it wasn't going to be cash, and the other person came in with cash. But we could have gotten it done at 850 if he'd gone in sooner at 850, even with a mortgage.
I want to jump in just real quick, because if you come across a situation where the customer will not go to the next level, the payment has them stuck, the interest rate has them stuck, talk to your mortgage lender, because there are interim products, ARM products, certain things where we could maybe buy down the rate with a credit and get them to their comfortable number. And sometimes that's all that it takes, is to get them to a number that they're comfortable with.
It wasn't he couldn't afford it. He could afford it.
He could afford it. It was just a mental block for him to think, I'm going to 850 on this house, and it's not.
Yeah. And he kept saying, when we bought our condo from you, you gave me the price that we should offer, and it worked. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not recommending that we go that low this time, because I knew there was another buyer involved that was interested. And the agent said, here's the price. It was stupid. I think he regrets it now. So the only positive I can take away is, I think the next time we find a house, and there'll be another one at some point, I don't think he'll screw around as much.
So, and this is not core to what our topic is today, but I think if you take that experience, which is frustrating and possibly painful, because now you're running around with this person, probably trying to replicate the deal they lost. Is that accurate, Beth?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
And ultimately the person came up to the 850, which they could have got it in the beginning. We need
Right.
to, have a goal of sharing experiences with people so that they avoid that process, kind of like a case study, right? It's like a homeowner that starts with selling putting their house on for $1 million instead of 900, and then they lower it 3 times to get to 900, then all the offers are lower, right? That's a bad strategy. And in the case where you have a relationship with that agent, I would say, Beth, I have a relationship with David. I trust David. The property is listed for 900. How long was it on the market, if you don't mind me asking?
A while. Maybe 60 days, something like that. Not like a year, but a
And
little longer than it should have been.
any price reductions or no?
Yeah, I think it had a price reduction, and
Yeah.
then
Now I remember as if it was yesterday when we had our meeting right around the corner from your office. I think it was when we first announced our aligning your office into Remax Select. And we're sitting there and a couple of the agents were talking about, it's just so annoying on both ends when, somebody was saying I had this property that was sitting for 120 days. A good agent came in, they made an offer. Then I got a second offer. They lost it. They probably don't believe me that I had 2 offers. And then everybody was saying, well, that happened to me. That happened to me.
yeah,
Do you remember that conversation in the
Yeah.
restaurant at that really long table? Everybody was like, how does this happen?
I
And
always say there's a weird karma when it comes to houses, that when one person wants it, it seems to go out to the universe that the house is now desired, and then other people come in. It happens all the time. It's
right, but
weird.
in that lunch that we had there, like everybody was chiming in and how awkward it is and how uncomfortable it is on both sides. Because we probably had more people on the listing side saying, I feel horrible because it was on forever. I get a good offer, and then another offer comes in. They probably don't believe me,
Yeah,
right? And there was no motivation for them to be anything other than 1,000% truthful. So I think if we were to tell a story about, hey, I know David, David's always been a straight shooter. We were talking about this at our last office meeting about how many times somebody will, maybe make a little bit of a less aggressive offer on a property, another offer will come in and they'll lose it. I feel pretty comfortable, Beth, that if we go in at 850, that we have a really good shot at getting this. And as a matter of fact, last month I had a client that, was willing to go to 850, started at 820, and wound up losing the property at the 850 when they could have had it. Right. So
that probably would have worked.
It's not just that, it's that now you're stuck back on the road touring the guy, and you're taking your time away from another client to put more money in your pocket. So it's just like, you're gonna get it. I'm sure he's gonna buy something, like you said.
Well,
It's just
he's
frustrating. What's that?
yeah, I mean, I'm going to make a fair amount of money from this guy, I believe, but it's frustrating that this was a good house for them, and
But
and
the
we
amount,
lost it because he
the
was
amount of money you're
stubborn.
gonna make is starting to decrease by the hours that you invest in him. So every hour you add, you're just gonna start making less money. That's what I'm saying.
Well, you could look at it that way. I mean, if you calculate it on hourly, but I also think that, like I said, I think it was possibly a valuable lesson for him.
well, my question is, was it a valuable lesson
For
to
you.
you?
And it was for me also. I should have gone in, I should have been a little bit more, a little stronger.
This is what I'm
From the
telling every
beginning.
agent on the team and in the firm.
Right,
We're in a climate
Beth,
where,
and Beth, we've all been there,
yes.
right?
Well, I'm
David's
not
been
taking
there.
it as, I mean,
Right.
it happens. And then, yeah, I wished I had been a little bit stronger with him from the get-go to say, listen, I don't think this agent is lying. He thought it was a negotiating tactic from this other agent. And I truly think the other agent, he likes me. And he was like, yeah, I'd like to get a deal done with you versus this other agent. He would have rather had me in the deal. And he told me, you know, here's where you need to be. But the client just seemed to want to say, well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I want to go in 20,000 under, and you know.
Beth, did you ever, when you're calling the other agent, you should put them on speaker so that the buyer can also hear the conversation, so it doesn't come just from you. Now he's hearing.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Okay, I mean, it's a little bit dicey, but
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
You could tell the listing agent, listen, I have my buyer with me. You know, we're thinking about coming in with this offer, and then see what kind of response you get back from the listing agent. Because a
Alright,
lot of times they think that we're lying to them. They think, oh, you're just
Right.
trying to get me up. But if
No,
they,
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think.
I think a lot of times what happens too is they just have to lose a deal or two to know that, you know, hey, the next time they're going to believe you. I've had that happen. The first time, you know, no, they want to offer what they want to offer. You can explain to them until you're blue in the face that, you know, it's really valued at this, and you know, it's a hot market and somebody else is, you know, going to get it. But they have a number in their head that they don't want to pass, and they feel that they're overpaying. But next time, after they've lost that, they're going to listen to you. At least that's been my experience.
that's true.
That's what I think too. That's what I also think.
So I think
But
look, I think there's shades of truth in both sides. Okay, but I also think that we need to focus on what we can control. And I think if we can build, you know, and Beth, I don't want to have this come across as being, how can I put it, and being critical,
no,
with
it's
you.
okay.
But I think the quality of the communication can always improve.
I
Everybody has,
agree. No,
everybody has room.
I thought I could have done. I thought I should have been stronger with him. Yeah, I mean, I was mad at
And
myself that I
sometimes,
felt like I let him down. Honestly.
okay, sometimes, you know, Beth, being a more effective agent, a more effective communicator is also by taking what we're telling them and rephrasing it in terms of questions, right? And it might be, you know, I spoke to the listing agent. The listing agent seems to be a straight shooter. Either done a transaction or I've worked with them in the past. I know of them. You know, if you knew that you could get this for $850, you know, how would you feel about that? Right? And then they say, well, yeah, I was looking to go a little bit lower. Well, you know, I've been in the business for a while, and I really had a great conversation. I think that they could put it together for $850. Would you want to risk another offer standing in front of you? And to be honest with you, you know, the agents with the most integrity, if you start at 830 and somebody else comes in 850 and then you go match it, who do you think is going to get the deal?
I can
Right.
give you one way that I deal with that sometimes as well is it's just that crucial conversation, which actually gives you a lot of credibility. Is that, hey, you know, if we come in at 8:30 and this agent has told us 8:50 is more than likely going to be doable, are you okay, since there's another buyer in the game now, are you okay with losing this home if we make an offer at 8:30? Are you okay with walking away from this home? Is it worth it to you? And that really makes them dive a bit deeper and really think about their offer. And that normally works for me.
You know,
Yeah,
that's a
and
good.
Sarah, even saying, and Beth, I'll come back to me, even
Okay.
saying that if you look at the way the business goes, there are a lot of agents, if they get an acceptable offer, that won't even go back and counter unacceptable offers, because that's the truth, right? Somebody gets what they're comfortable with, the terms and the number are fine. They might say, hey, look, I don't want to go back and forth because I might lose the first buyer who I'm comfortable with. Right? But the buyer might not think that way. The buyer might think that they'll have endless opportunities to improve their offer, which is not the case.
So Rob, can I just go back to your point earlier before this about going deeper in your questioning with the buyer. Very unique circumstance, but kind of interesting. In the town of Parsippany, there are two high schools. And so I had two clients looking in Parsippany for homes, and they both said to me that we want the best school district. And I was like, okay, so what what does that mean to you? Well, I only want my kids to go to Par Hills High School. And I'm like, okay. And then my other client says to me, I only want my kids to go to Parsippany High School. So clearly, even though they said they wanted a good school district, there was another level of questioning that needed to happen in order to make sure that we went to the right high school.
Yep. And that anchors them to the outcome. And most, if not all, of the tips that I share are borrowed from either you or other, this group or other people that I truly respect. And my mission is to share the best practices from some of the most incredible people so that you don't have to learn the lesson the hard way, or you can get to 30 years experience in 2 or 3 years. Okay. So, and I know, Mickey, you're still there, right? Lippman? I don't know if Mickey's still with us, or maybe she can't talk, but
No, I hear you.
so Mickey, I'm going to maybe embarrass you by saying that you are one of the hardest working, most ethical
Not
advocates
an embarrassment. Okay.
advocates for your clients, right?
Yes.
And I think sometimes, like for me, I cringe when you say sometimes they have to lose a house to learn. Okay, and I say that from the bottom of my heart because
Okay.
I
I feel
don't.
different. I've learned different
Well,
from my
I know.
experience.
All right, I know your experience has taught you differently, but when you repeat stuff, it 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 basically becomes part of your thinking process, right? It's like you wouldn't say a negative affirmation like everybody needs to lose a house before they buy one. Everybody needs to like to me
I'm not
that's
saying that by any means, but what I said is when you have somebody that's not, even though you're telling them that, look, this is the price you need to go to get the house, and they're not willing to listen to you, at that point, there's only so much you can say without being really pushy. And I always want to explain to them what I think the sales price needs to be, in my opinion, based on, facts, comps and such, speaking to the agent. And when they don't want to listen after I've given them all the information, then there's not more I can do. I'm just going to let them, well, not even let them, they're going to lose it because they are not willing to pay. So
right.
My point is that sometimes they just have to lose a deal, and then the next time they'll listen a little more. That's all.
So and Mickey, there's pieces of truth in both, right? Sometimes people do need to lose a home, but I'm going to say to everybody on this call that for all of the activities that we do, me when I'm trying to help, I see Abe there who puts me in touch with a lot of great people. Sometimes we lose, and I'm like thinking to myself, how could I have positioned it differently in the way I communicate the value proposition versus how I did. And for you, Mickey, I think that yes, some people need to lose a property, but I think to believe that or even to have that in the back of your mind is a disempowering belief. And maybe we need to also focus on that's going to happen, but is there a way that we can, change the communication so that it happens less or less frequently? Okay, maybe you're going to drop off. I don't mean to offend you in any way, but I'm thinking that if we can say, Mickey, if you knew you're going to lose this property if you knew that you'd be comfortable at 850, and you knew in my experience, 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 sellers won't counter if they have an acceptable offer. And maybe you'll even ask the seller, ask the listing agent, hey, Karma, if we make an offer and you have a higher offer, you generally go back, or if that other offer is good, would you keep it? Would you just go with it? Right? And maybe they would say, hey, if we get an acceptable offer, we're just going to go with it. And then I would share that with my buyer so that we have a little bit of a different outcome. Okay. So, again, my goal here is to help change the perspective that we have and realize that, the agent that you work with does matter. Not only is it the negotiation skills that you have with the offer that you presented, but it's setting the expectation to make the right offer. This was a Tom Toole thing that I picked up on when he does his buyer training. He would be like, hey, Marilyn, when we go look at properties, I'm going to ask you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 7. And keeping in mind that anything that's a 5 or above is offer territory. And the reason why I say that is because there's no perfect homes, right? Now, I was like, wow, like if I saw a house that met was a 7, now I'm thinking about making an offer on it because, there are things that you can do. You can, add to the house in the future. You can put a new kitchen in. There are things that are possible when you see properties. So that programmed my thinking of how I would have that conversation. And of course, it's not going to work all the time. And you can all give me examples where it doesn't work. But I do think a lot of people want to find, as close to the perfect house. And let's face it, Mickey, most people want to feel like they got a deal on it, right? And to get a deal, they want to feel like they've negotiated it down. And I think that we, in Beth's case, maybe we could have done better. And Beth is here with the group because we want to figure out collectively how can we find a way to do better. And maybe one of our goals is to, find a more effective way of communicating, right? I mean, Abe, you get frustrated when we find great candidates and we can't find the communication channel. We know that they would do better here, right?
Part of life, part of this business. Can I interject something very interesting? Here's a scenario that happened, and I think it worked very effectively. A house was for $440,000. The offer came in at $400,000, and the seller said some thanks. And I walked over and said, "Put out your hand." I shook his hand. I said, "For $40,000, you just bought back that home. Does that make sense? We'll have it coming back in, and let's see if we can split the difference and go forward." That's the wake up call, and it works almost every time.
Right. So you change the language. I've had people say that although the market's only although the comps are only showing my house is worth 400, my house is worth 450. Right. And you might have people that say that or believe that or suddenly put those hints out. I had an agent that used to say, oh, well, if you're certain that your house is worth 450, we can buy 2 more just like yours for 400. Are you in? And it makes it ridiculous.
Yogi Berra said it ain't over till it's over.
Yep. So before I run out of time, I'd like everybody to write down your quarterly goals, your annual goals, your intermediate, and your kind of life goals. Okay, put those down, and be very specific how you do it. And please, 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 review them no less than weekly. Okay, and measure your actions towards going towards that goal. Yeah, Tony Vero, I was at a sales meeting in Morristown. Somebody's like, "Who's that guy that has all that discipline that always talks?" They couldn't remember your name, and I was like, "Tony." Like, yes, I wish I had his discipline. That was Rusi Gandhi. And you've made an impression because you've been doing this business for how long, Tony?
Since 1983, 42 years.
And Tony, do you write down goals?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you got to do that all the time, every day, every week, every month.
And
see where you at and where you want to go.
And you do some pretty significant time blocking even after 42 years, right?
Well, the thing is that, like I said before, being in real estate, you got to talk to people. So in the morning is the best time to do that because you are full of energy. Yeah, and you can tell people, listen, until noon, I don't exist. Leave me alone. Yeah, don't bother me. So everybody around you knows not to bother you until noon, and then between noon and 1, then you put out the fires because there is nothing more important than to talk to people until noon.
Yeah.
There's an old adage, goal getting is goal setting, or goal setting is goal getting.
Yeah, and the other thing is that what do you call there? You got to be the discipline. The discipline to say no. Is that on my schedule? No. So I don't have to do it. If it's on my schedule, I'll do it. If it's not, I don't have to do it. So you got to have the discipline, the consistency, and the intensity. Because if you are a wishy-washy, people realize that you really don't care, and so they're not going to do any business with you.
Here's another good point. I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later. I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later. It's a wake up call.
Exactly. Or do you like to tell you what you need to hear, or would you like me to tell you what you like to hear?
So Abe, to bring this to a conclusion, I'm gonna ask everybody to just write this down. Okay, I know some of you are driving, some of you are off camera, but if you can, commit to writing your goals down, do them quarterly, annual, intermediate, which could be a 5 to 10 year goal, and then a lifetime goal of what you want, and have it both be business and personal. And then you need to measure it. It's like stepping on the scale. Okay, it tells you that's the scoreboard as to where you're going. Okay, and we have a tremendous community of peers that could help you if you wanted to find somebody that can be your accountability partner. I couldn't think of anything better than somebody from Arizona and Florida, or New Jersey and Arizona, or New Jersey and Florida being accountability partners. Adopt a friend, find an accountability partner that will find opportunities for you, right? It's the reticular activator in your head. Like if I'm working with Tony down in Florida and I'm here in New Jersey, I might hear a colleague say, "Hey, I need an excellent agent down in, Broward County," and I'm going out of my way to say, "Hey, you must call Tony," right? And Tony's doing the same thing. He says, "Hey, I have a buyer here. They need to list their property in Short Hills." You're picking up the phone and you're calling me. Like, those are some of the things that I would be looking to do with the dynamic and the community that we have. Okay, and hold each other accountable. It's very simple. Have integrity with it. Say, "You know what, Tony, I had a bad week. I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but I'm going to hop on that call again next week, and I'm going to hold myself accountable to doing what I know I need to do." Okay. And for those of you who, I'm challenging you with some of the outcomes and suggesting that, yes, Mickey, you're absolutely right. Some people do need to lose homes, but there are some people that we can communicate differently and get to a different outcome. Okay. And, I see Abe with his hand on his head saying, "Oh, Rob, you let me down on a bunch of these meetings." I'm trying, buddy.
You didn't let me down. It's part of life. Remember, every day's a new development. So what happens today may be different tomorrow. I never look at it as negative. It's only a way of growing our business.
Yeah, but we keep chopping, we keep moving forward. Okay. Goals, without goals, it's like driving without a map. Okay. You might get there, but you're going the wrong place.
Need a schedule too.
Yeah, a schedule, and a goal, setting goals and without having the discipline to execute, Ron, is equally as bad, right? So I really I hope that you can just start with writing them down, reviewing them, helping this have an impact. When you get really deep, if I was asking, people on this call, what does it mean to make a diamond club? And that might mean that you helped 100 families achieve their goal. And what does that mean to you, right? That, money is fungible. It can kind of come and go, but the impact that you have lasts forever, right? The things that you do, those are lifelong activities that you never forget. So anybody have any last minute questions?
Hey, Rob, it's Tyler.
Tyler.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I just want to give a quick plug for my class that I'm going to be doing on Tuesday, the Remax app that you can now give to your clients with your name and connected to you and everything. It's a killer app. I'm going to be talking about it on Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. East Coast time. And I'm going to show you how to get it in your client's hands, generate some leads off it. It's a free tool. It's incredible. If you haven't taken a look at it yet, I really encourage you to tune into my class here on zoomwithremax.com on Tuesday. It is going to be recorded, so if you can't attend, message me and I'll make sure I get it to you. Thank you.
And then Idona, talk about, is Glenn's session 7 more or 9 more?
So we have 9 more sessions. The first session was last Tuesday. If you did miss that session, don't be, you didn't really miss much. It was just an overview. It is recorded. The way you can watch these masterminds are in our hub. Just go to remaxselect.com, pick the state that you're in, go under masterminds, and they will all be there. The second session starts Tuesday, so don't miss it. And again, it will
10
be
a.m., right?
10 a.m. Eastern time.
And was anybody on Glenn's session? Was that amazing or what?
Yes, it was.
All right, you're on mute there.
Unbelievable. There were so many good ideas, and he just kept saying, wait, don't do anything yet. Wait till you hear everything that I'm going to tell you over the next 9 more weeks before you decide what to do. But I found it unbelievable.
Yeah, and Glenn epitomizes the culture that we have where, I can't tell you how many times your peers and the people on these calls will come and say, hey, Rob, can I share this? This is something that I've been doing that works great. And, Glenn just has a passion for sharing and making a difference. And some of the things he's doing are like, 2 moves ahead of anything I've ever thought of in real estate. I mean, he's trained his artificial intelligence to read contracts and summarize them for him so that it makes it simple and even make recommendations on which offer is the best. I'm like, that is next level stuff. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah, and Rob, I just want to say something because I would like to give credit to Tyler. He's been doing the Bold Trail KB Core trainings for several months, so he has prepared us for Glenn to take over because you definitely want to make sure you are up to speed with Bold Trail KB Core because that's some of the trainings with Glenn will have to do with KB Core. So I would suggest everyone just go on the Max Center and our hub, just review the videos that Tyler has done for us, and you will be able to go to the next step. So I just want to say thank you to Tyler. He's been doing a great job.
Great. Everybody have a wonderful weekend and hope to see you next week or on Tuesday. Have a great one, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.